What's up guys, it's Brad from LightArchitect. In this video, I'm going to show how you can make a dynamic dancing grass humanoid inside of Blender. This effect is super fun and is surprisingly not very difficult to create. Let's get started. Before doing anything else, I recommend you either import or create the armature you'll be using to animate your character. You can build your own armature, or you can download one off of Mixamo's website with some motion capture data attached. For our process, we went to Mixamo's dancing motion capture library and found some mocap data we liked. I'll use this one of a breakdance animation. Now that we've chosen one, let's download the FBX file of the armature with the motion capture data attached. In Blender, click on Import FBX and find the file. Be sure to click on Automatic Bone Orientation so that your bones line up and import it. Now that you have your armature and motion capture data imported, it's time to create the base model of your character. Select your armature and set it into rest position. Now I'll add a sphere, and in edit mode I will duplicate and adjust its scale and dimensions to create the different extremities of our character and line them up to the armature bones. Finally, add a material to your 3D character. For mine, I'm just going to use a principled shader with a darker green diffuse material and a little bit of subsurface scattering just for fun. Now that we've modeled our character, it's time to match its movement to the motion capture data on the armature. Select your character model and apply all the transforms by clicking Ctrl A and selecting the option on the drop-down menu. Select your character model and hold Shift while you then select the armature. Press Ctrl P and set your model's parent to the armature with automatic weights. Now if you go back into pose mode, your character model should follow the animation of your armature. Now for the fun part. Select your character model and add a new particle system in the particle tab. Switch the particle type to hair. Check the advanced, hair dynamics, and rotation checkbox options. In the emission tab, play around with the number of strands that you want and bring down the hair length to something that fits your model. I recommend keeping the segments at least 5 so that the hair system bends a bit. At this point, it's time to play around with some hair dynamic settings to make the hair system a little bit more rigid like grass. To do this, you can experiment with the pin goal strength and structure settings. I'm going to bring up the pin goal strength to 0.5 and leave the other settings as is. Now save your project. Open up your cache tab in the particle settings, set the frames input and output that you want to bake your dynamics, and bake your system. Now that we baked our hair dynamics, it's time to instance some nature assets instead of the hair strands. There are two main ways to do this. One way involves instancing a nature asset directly on the particle system through the particle system settings, and the other way involves using a particle instance modifier on the nature asset itself. This second way I mentioned will allow the nature asset to better conform to the way the hair particles bend, however is much more heavy depending on the speed of your computer. We'll start on the simplest way first. First, we will import our nature asset. In this video, I'm going to use an asset from the Nisarga Light collection. There's a link to a value bundle with this amazing nature add-on, as well as our Spiderfy add-on in the description below. Once we import our nature asset into the scene, let's go back to our particle system settings. Under our render tab, we will switch the render as option to object, and then select the nature asset we have just imported. Now you can adjust the scale settings and add some scale randomness for some variation in size, and you have successfully created your grass creature. Okay, so the downside to this way of instancing our nature is that while the grass assets rotate according to your hair simulation, they don't actually bend or warp themselves. So this next way of instancing is actually a little bit more accurate in replicating the actual movement of your hair particles with the nature assets instanced on your character. If you want to actually warp your assets more realistically along with the dynamic hair system with this second technique, let's go back to just after we baked our hair particle movement. This time we will select the Render as Object option, but we won't choose an object to instance. Instead, select the nature asset you have imported and go to your Modifiers tab. Add a Particle Instance modifier and select the character with your hair particle system. Now you'll get something like this. Enable the size parameter, select the Create Along Paths checkbox, and experiment with the axis options if your asset's orientation seems off. Sometimes this effect can be a little confusing to see, but to understand it better, the main setting you need to experiment with is the factor for the position along the path. The higher this number is, the more your nature assets that you are instancing will be warped along the curved paths of your hair simulation. I recommend keeping it around 0.7, but it depends on the stiffness of your original hair dynamics. At this point, you should have a pretty fun little animation, but depending on the look you are going for, you can adjust further or rebake your hair system with different parameters. Anyways guys, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. As always, feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions or suggestions in the comment section below. Subscribe to learn more visual effects techniques, and I'll see you next time.